hotel lobby was bustling with activity. Guests were checking in, bellhops were moving luggage, and the air carried the soft hum of polite conversation and the occasional clatter of luggage wheels on marble floors. It was a busy afternoon, and the reception area was filled with both the excitement and stress of travelers arriving from all corners of the world. In the midst of this organized chaos, a man walked in who immediately drew attention without even trying. He had a quiet presence, yet there was a sense of authority about him. Dressed in an impeccably tailored suit and carrying a sleek, black leather briefcase, he looked both elegant and tired. His face bore the subtle signs of travel fatigue, but his eyes were alert, scanning the lobby with a mixture of curiosity and careful observation. It was clear he was a man of experience, someone who had traveled extensively and was accustomed to being in different places, yet he carried himself with a calm, controlled demeanor. He approached the front desk, where two receptionists were busy attending to guests. One of them looked up, smiled politely, and asked if he had a reservation. The man responded, but his words were in Arabic, a language neither of the receptionists spoke. They exchanged nervous glances. One receptionist tried to guess what he was saying, responding with English words slowly and carefully, but the Tycoon just repeated himself, politely but firmly. The conversation became a cycle of misunderstanding. Gestures were made, papers were shuffled, and polite smiles were offered, but the situation was only growing more confusing. The other guests began to notice the tension. Some paused briefly, trying to see what was happening, while others returned to their own business, but the awkward energy lingered in the air. The man continued to speak in Arabic, his tone calm and respectful. He was not angry or rude, but the lack of understanding was creating a growing sense of discomfort. The receptionists did their best, pointing at forms, trying to mimic words, even using translation apps on their phones, but nothing seemed to work. The Tycoon's polite nods and soft gestures were met with confusion. He leaned slightly forward, hoping that a visual clue might help bridge the communication gap. The receptionists, however, were becoming more flustered. They whispered to each other under their breath, clearly unsure how to proceed. A sense of frustration began to build, not just for the staff but for the man as well. He did not want to create a scene, yet he needed to check in, and the inability to communicate was making even a simple process seem impossible. Time seemed to stretch. The Tycoon stood patiently, though he could feel the minutes passing slowly. He looked around the lobby, taking in the polished floors, the modern chandeliers, and the softly glowing lamps. Everything was beautiful, but the beauty of the place did little to ease the tension he felt. He had encountered such situations before, of course. Traveling frequently meant dealing with language barriers, but that did not make them any easier. He was accustomed to patience, to politeness, and to handling situations delicately, yet the current situation tested his limits. His hands rested lightly on the edge of the reception desk, a subtle signal of waiting, of hope that someone might soon understand him. Across the lobby, a young waitress was finishing her duties. She had been tidying up tables and serving guests in the lounge area, her day full of small interactions and tasks. She noticed the commotion at the front desk and saw the man standing there, trying to communicate. Most people around him were simply watching or avoiding eye contact, unsure of how to help. But she paused. Something about the situation caught her attention. She could see the man was polite, not demanding, and that the reception staff were genuinely trying but failing. She also noticed the language barrier, recognizing the words and the tone of Arabic he was using. She understood immediately that this was not a conflict or a rude guest. It was a simple problem of communication. Her mind started turning, thinking about how she could step in to help. She felt a small spark of responsibility, the human instinct to bridge the gap and make someone feel welcome. Meanwhile, the Tycoon continued trying to explain himself. He moved his hands slightly, pointing to his reservation confirmation on his phone, hoping this might help. The receptionists leaned in, trying to follow his gestures, but they only seemed more confused. One receptionist suggested they call a translator, but the man shook his head gently, indicating that he did not want to complicate things further. He simply needed someone who could understand him directly. He gave a small, apologetic smile as if to say, "I do not mean to be difficult." Yet the polite tone did little to relieve the tension that had settled over the desk area. The young waitress took a deep breath. She was not a receptionist, and it was not her job to handle check-ins. Yet she felt she could help. She stepped toward the desk quietly, making sure not to interrupt the other staff, but signaling that she had a potential solution. The man noticed her approach and looked at her, a flicker of curiosity and hope in his eyes. He nodded slightly, as if sensing that she might understand him. She smiled softly and greeted him in Arabic, a simple phrase of welcome and hospitality. The change in his expression was immediate. His eyes brightened, and the tension in his shoulders eased. He repeated a phrase, and she responded naturally, confirming that she understood him perfectly. The interaction was brief but powerful. The simple act of speaking his language created a bridge that had been missing, turning frustration into relief. Other staff at the desk watched in astonishment. They had been struggling for minutes, and yet a young waitress, someone who was not even part of the reception team, had solved the problem within moments. The man's polite gestures continued, but now accompanied by genuine gratitude. He handed over his reservation details again, and she assisted him in completing the check-in process. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Where there had been awkward tension and confusion, now there was calm, even a sense of warmth. The other guests, who had been watching quietly, began to return their attention to their own matters, but they could not help noticing the change in energy. The lobby felt more relaxed, more welcoming, and more human. By the time the check-in was complete, the Tycoon was smiling gently. He thanked the young waitress in Arabic, his words carrying sincerity and respect. She nodded, responding with equal warmth. The simple exchange of language had transformed what could have been an uncomfortable and frustrating situation into a moment of human connection. The receptionists, initially flustered, now watched and learned, realizing the power of empathy and initiative. The man walked toward the elevators, his posture more relaxed, carrying with him not just his luggage but a sense of relief and appreciation. The young waitress returned to her duties, quietly proud of what she had accomplished, understanding that a small act of attention and care could make a world of difference to someone feeling lost or misunderstood. The moment lingered in the lobby, subtle but meaningful. It was a reminder that communication, kindness, and simple understanding were more powerful than any procedure, form, or protocol. For the Arab Tycoon, it was the first truly welcoming experience he had in the city. For the young waitress, it was a moment of quiet pride and a confirmation that noticing others and stepping in to help, even in small ways, could change the course of someone's day. And for the hotel, it became an unspoken lesson that true service goes beyond rules. It lives in the humanity of those who notice and care. After the initial misunderstanding at the reception desk, the Arab Tycoon was led to the lounge area by the young waitress. The space was quiet compared to the busy lobby, with soft lighting, comfortable chairs, and a gentle hum of conversation from other guests who were relaxing or waiting for their appointments. The Tycoon settled into a seat, setting his briefcase beside him, and exhaled slowly. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly, but a hint of fatigue still lingered on his face. He glanced around the lounge, noticing the meticulous arrangement of the furniture, the subtle aroma of fresh flowers, and the soft instrumental music playing in the background. Everything spoke of luxury and calm, yet he appreciated that none of it mattered as much as the feeling of being understood. The young waitress approached him with a tray that carried a small teapot, a delicate cup, and a few biscuits. She greeted him again in Arabic, asking politely if he would like tea. The Tycoon's eyes lit up with a mixture of surprise and relief. He nodded, a soft smile forming on his face. The waitress poured the tea carefully, making sure the temperature was just right, and handed the cup to him with both hands, a gesture of respect and attentiveness. The warmth of the tea was comforting, but it was the act itself, the recognition and care, that touched him deeply. In a foreign city where he often felt isolated, this simple gesture made him feel seen and respected. As he sipped the tea, the Tycoon began to relax further. The young waitress sat across from him, maintaining a respectful distance but keeping the conversation light and friendly. She asked gentle questions in Arabic, showing curiosity about his journey and interest in his comfort. The tycoon responded, explaining that he had traveled a long way and that dealing with the reception staff had been slightly stressful, not because of their attitude but because of the language barrier. His words were calm, measured, but there was a hint of relief in his tone. For the first time that day, he felt a sense of ease, as if a small cloud of discomfort had lifted. The waitress listened attentively, nodding and offering brief responses to encourage him to continue. She shared a few small tips about the city, speaking in a tone that was friendly yet professional. She suggested local places he might enjoy, mentioned the best time to explore nearby attractions, and even shared a few phrases in Arabic that might help him in public areas. The tycoon smiled, occasionally chuckling at her enthusiasm. It was clear he appreciated not just her language skills, but the genuine effort she was making to make him feel comfortable and welcome. Her presence transformed a potentially frustrating experience into something warm and human. Other guests in the lounge could not help but notice the interaction. There was a quiet dignity in the way the tycoon carried himself, and an equally gentle confidence in the waitress's actions. Unlike the brief, transactional interactions he had earlier at the reception, this exchange felt personal, thoughtful, and human. Some guests glanced at each other and smiled, sensing the positive energy. Others continued with their conversations or reading, but the air of calm and attentiveness radiating from the two individuals was noticeable. The tycoon, who had often felt invisible in crowded spaces, seemed to draw quiet respect without needing to assert authority or demand attention. As the conversation continued, the young waitress offered him additional tea when his cup ran low, and they discussed his travel schedule in simple, polite terms. The tycoon shared stories of cities he had visited and cultural experiences he had encountered. He spoke not as a wealthy or powerful man, but as a traveler with curiosity and a desire to understand the world. The waitress listened carefully, occasionally asking questions that reflected genuine interest. Their conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by small pauses as the tycoon savored the tea and looked around the lounge. It was a quiet, unassuming moment, but it carried weight and meaning, highlighting the importance of patience, empathy, and genuine human interaction. The young waitress then noticed that the tycoon seemed tired and suggested he might want to rest a little before attending to his business. She offered a nearby quiet corner where he could sit more comfortably or even catch a brief moment of relaxation. He appreciated the suggestion and moved to the more private area, with the waitress ensuring he had everything he needed: a cushion for support, a small table for his belongings, and a refill of tea. Her attention to detail was subtle, never intrusive, but clearly considerate. The tycoon observed her carefully, noticing her professionalism and warmth. It was a rare experience, he realized, to encounter someone who combined efficiency with genuine human kindness. During this quiet period, the tycoon shared his reflections on traveling and the challenges of being understood in foreign countries. He spoke about the times he had felt isolated, despite being surrounded by people, and how gestures of understanding, however small, had made a lasting impression. The waitress listened without judgment, offering brief comments that encouraged him to continue. There was a sense of mutual respect developing, one built on empathy and shared humanity rather than wealth or status. The tycoon's eyes occasionally softened, showing a rare vulnerability that only someone he trusted, even briefly, could witness. Minutes turned into a gentle passage of time. The lounge became quieter as other guests left or moved to other areas, leaving the tycoon and the waitress in a calm, almost private space. She refilled his tea once more, carefully handling the pot and cup, and offered a small assortment of local snacks. He accepted them politely, and their conversation shifted slightly to lighter topics. The flavors of the tea, the simple joy of tasting a familiar tradition, and the comfort of familiar language in a foreign land. The warmth of the tea, combined with the attentive conversation, helped the tycoon feel not just welcomed but valued. It was a stark contrast to the earlier tension at the reception, where misunderstandings had created a barrier between him and the people around him. The young waitress's presence had changed the entire experience. What began as a potentially frustrating and isolating situation had become a moment of connection and human warmth. She had not only understood his language but had also understood his needs, both spoken and unspoken. She had provided comfort, guidance, and the simple dignity of being listened to and respected. The Tycoon, who often interacted with staff in hotels purely for business or efficiency, felt a rare sense of personal attention. He was aware that her actions required initiative and care, and he silently appreciated the thoughtfulness behind them. Eventually, the Tycoon prepared to leave the lounge area and attend to his scheduled commitments. Before he stood up, he thanked the young waitress once more, expressing his gratitude sincerely in Arabic. She smiled, nodded, and wished him well, knowing that her small gestures had created a meaningful impact. The interaction left a quiet but lasting impression on both of them. The Tycoon had regained a sense of ease and comfort in an otherwise unfamiliar environment, and the waitress had experienced the quiet satisfaction of making a difference through kindness and attentiveness. As the Tycoon walked toward the elevators, he felt a sense of calm and confidence that had been missing since his arrival. The lounge, once just a place to wait, had become a space where he felt understood and respected. The young waitress returned to her duties, carrying with her the quiet pride of knowing she had bridged a gap, not just in language, but in human connection. She had transformed a potentially stressful encounter into a meaningful experience. Both of them, in their separate ways, left the lounge carrying a renewed sense of humanity. He, feeling welcomed and seen, and she, realizing the power of empathy and initiative in making a real difference in someone's day. The afternoon continued quietly in the lounge as the Arab Tycoon settled into his seat, feeling more comfortable than he had since arriving at the hotel. The young waitress, attentive and patient, noticed the subtle changes in his demeanor, the way his shoulders relaxed, the soft smile that occasionally appeared, and the gentle way he held the cup of tea in his hands. She realized that what he needed was not just service or assistance, but a sense of human connection, a reassurance that he was understood and welcomed. She approached him with the teapot once more, offering to refill his cup. He nodded gratefully, and she poured the tea carefully, making sure not to spill a drop. The small act, seemingly simple, carried a weight of respect and attentiveness that went beyond words. As the tea was poured, the Tycoon began to speak more freely. He shared stories of his travels, speaking about different countries he had visited, the people he had met, and the challenges he had faced along the way. His voice was calm, but there was a quiet passion behind his words. The young waitress listened intently, responding with gestures of understanding and brief comments in Arabic. She asked gentle questions, encouraging him to continue, and occasionally offered small observations about the city they were in. Her engagement was not intrusive. It was thoughtful and empathetic, allowing the Tycoon to feel heard and valued. The Tycoon described moments when he had felt lost in foreign lands, despite being surrounded by people. He spoke about the frustration of trying to explain himself, of gestures misunderstood, and words lost in translation. His tone was reflective, carrying a hint of melancholy, yet there was also gratitude in his voice as he recounted the small gestures of kindness he had encountered on his journeys. The young waitress responded with empathy, nodding gently and occasionally offering words of reassurance. She recognized that listening itself could be a gift, and she gave him her full attention, making him feel important and respected. As the conversation continued, the young waitress suggested a few local experiences he might enjoy during his stay. She spoke about nearby markets, cultural spots, and quiet cafes that offered both comfort and a taste of the local life. She even shared a few small phrases in Arabic that he could use with taxi drivers or shopkeepers, helping him navigate the city more easily. The Tycoon smiled at her thoughtfulness, appreciating not just the information, but the effort she made to ensure his experience would be pleasant and comfortable. Her presence was calming, and the lounge, filled with soft music and gentle conversation, felt like a small oasis away from the complexities of travel. Other guests in the lounge began to notice the change in the atmosphere. There was a quiet dignity in the way the Tycoon spoke, a subtle warmth in the interaction, and a gentle professionalism in the waitress's manner. It was a scene that conveyed empathy, understanding, and human connection without words. People glanced briefly, some smiling softly, recognizing the rare beauty of such simple, meaningful interaction. It was a reminder that even in a busy hotel filled with strangers, moments of genuine human kindness could create a sense of calm and respect. The tycoon began to discuss his work, speaking of projects and responsibilities that often kept him traveling for long hours. He spoke without boastfulness, merely describing the challenges and experiences that came with his position. The young waitress listened carefully, responding with curiosity and respect. She acknowledged the dedication and effort required, but never made him feel the need to impress her. The exchange was natural, free of judgment or pretense, and it allowed the tycoon to feel understood without the weight of status or expectations. In that moment, he was simply a man far from home, and she was someone who saw him for who he truly was. The young waitress then noticed that the tycoon seemed contemplative, staring into the distance with a faint smile. She poured another cup of tea, placing it gently in front of him. He looked at her, appreciating the small but thoughtful gesture. The warmth of the tea seemed to mirror the comfort he felt from the interaction itself. They shared a quiet moment, sipping their tea in companionable silence, a pause that spoke volumes about understanding and respect. It was in these small, unspoken moments that the depth of connection often grew, and both of them seemed to sense it. As time passed, the tycoon began to share lighter stories, recounting amusing experiences from his travels and the odd situations he had found himself in. His voice carried laughter, gentle and understated, filling the lounge with a sense of warmth. The young waitress responded with quiet amusement, occasionally laughing softly, her presence encouraging him to continue. Their conversation moved fluidly between serious reflection and light-hearted anecdotes, creating a natural rhythm that made the interaction feel effortless and genuine. The lounge, which had been filled with distant chatter and the occasional clatter of trays, now seemed centered around this human connection, drawing subtle attention from those nearby. At one point, the tycoon expressed his appreciation for the small details in life, the simple comforts, the moments of kindness from strangers, and the opportunities to feel understood. He spoke about how rare it was to encounter someone who could listen attentively, respond thoughtfully, and provide genuine assistance without expectation. The young waitress nodded, recognizing that these were moments that mattered more than grand gestures or material wealth. She had given him a sense of presence and care, and in return, he offered gratitude that went beyond words. It was a quiet affirmation of the impact that empathy and attentiveness could have on another person. The young waitress suggested that he might enjoy a short walk around the hotel garden after finishing his tea. She described the path, the flowers, and the serene spots where he could sit and reflect. The tycoon smiled, clearly touched by her thoughtfulness. He had arrived at the hotel weary and uncertain, but now he felt a sense of welcome and calm that he had rarely experienced in similar situations. Her guidance was subtle, yet it provided direction and comfort, turning an ordinary hotel experience into something meaningful and memorable. As the afternoon sun shifted, casting soft light through the lounge windows, the tycoon and the waitress continued their conversation. He spoke about his family, his interests, and the joys and challenges of his work. She listened attentively, offering brief comments and thoughtful questions that encouraged him to continue sharing. The interaction was respectful and human, grounded in simple kindness and mutual understanding. It was clear that the tycoon felt a connection that went beyond words, an understanding that someone genuinely cared about his comfort and experience. Eventually, the tycoon finished his tea, setting the cup down with a gentle sigh of satisfaction. He looked at the young waitress with genuine appreciation, expressing his thanks once more in Arabic. She smiled, acknowledging his gratitude with warmth and sincerity. The lounge had become more than a waiting area. It had become a space of connection, understanding, and quiet reflection. Both of them carried with them the impact of the interaction. He, feeling respected and welcomed, and she, aware of the profound difference a small act of attentiveness could make in another person's life. Before leaving the lounge, the tycoon paused for a moment, looking around at the environment that had been transformed by this simple interaction. The young waitress had not only provided assistance but had created a sense of comfort and respect that lingered in the air. The gesture of offering tea, speaking in his language, and listening with care had created a bond, however brief, that transcended cultural and language barriers. As he stood up and prepared to continue with his day, he felt a renewed sense of calm, confidence, and appreciation for the human connection he had experienced. The young waitress returned to her duties, her heart quietly full with the satisfaction of knowing she had made a difference. She had bridged a gap, not only of language but of understanding, and had transformed a potentially stressful situation into a moment of warmth, respect, and empathy. The lounge returned to its usual rhythm, but the memory of the interaction remained, a testament to the power of kindness and attentiveness in making someone feel valued and understood. Both the tycoon and the waitress carried the experience with them, a shared moment of humanity in the midst of their separate lives, proving that small, thoughtful actions can have a lasting and meaningful impact. The afternoon continued with a gentle quiet in the lounge. The Arab tycoon had spent time sipping tea, sharing stories, and reflecting quietly, and the young waitress remained nearby, attentive but unobtrusive. She had learned not only his language but also a subtle understanding of his moods and preferences. Each gesture, each small act, had been made with thoughtfulness and care, creating an atmosphere of comfort and respect. The tycoon, who had arrived weary and slightly tense, now seemed lighter, more at ease, and even carried a small spark of curiosity about the hotel and the city he had only just arrived in. The tycoon finally leaned back in his chair, hands folded lightly over his briefcase, and spoke softly. He expressed his gratitude for the waitress's patience and attentiveness, emphasizing that in all his travels, he rarely encountered someone who could provide both professional service and genuine empathy. Her actions had made him feel welcomed, understood, and even inspired a small sense of hope in his otherwise routine day. The waitress smiled, nodding, feeling the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing one has truly helped another person in a meaningful way. Her gestures had bridged more than just a language gap. They had created human connection and understanding in its simplest and most profound form. The lounge was peaceful, yet other staff members had begun to take notice. Some approached cautiously, curious about what had taken place between the two. They watched quietly as the tycoon spoke, observing his relaxed posture, the calm in his expression, and the subtle energy that had transformed the previously tense atmosphere at the reception. The young waitress continued her work nearby, but every so often she glanced over, checking to ensure the tycoon was comfortable and had everything he needed. The care she displayed was not performative. It was natural, sincere, and driven by her awareness of what another person needed in that moment. The tycoon began to speak about his experiences with hotels in foreign countries. He explained that often, even luxurious settings could feel impersonal, with staff following routines and protocols but rarely creating a sense of human connection. His voice carried a calm reflection, mixed with the faint frustration of past experiences. He had arrived expecting efficiency, perhaps courtesy, but not warmth. And yet, here he was, feeling valued and respected. The young waitress listened, nodding and responding in Arabic, her words simple but thoughtful. She acknowledged his feelings, emphasizing that understanding and attentiveness often made more impact than lavish amenities or grand gestures. He nodded, visibly touched by her words and the sincerity behind them. At one point, the tycoon shared a memory from his travels, recounting a situation in a distant city where he had been misunderstood because of language differences. He described the sense of isolation he had felt, despite being surrounded by people. The young waitress responded with empathy, confirming that such experiences could indeed feel frustrating and lonely. She offered her perspective, suggesting that small acts of attentiveness and listening could make a significant difference in how someone experienced a place. The tycoon listened intently, appreciating not only her words, but also the thoughtfulness and care behind them. It was clear that he felt a rare sense of understanding, something that was not often found in the busy world he traveled through. Other guests and staff continued to notice the subtle transformation. The lounge, once filled with ordinary activity, now seemed touched by the quiet presence of understanding and respect. There was an energy of calm dignity in the way the Tycoon sat, the way he spoke, and the way the waitress responded to him. It was not about wealth, status, or position. It was about recognizing another human being, seeing them, and responding with genuine attention. The interaction was a quiet reminder that true service and kindness often went beyond the formalities of a job. It was about noticing, caring, and connecting. The Tycoon's conversation shifted slightly as he began to discuss his work, speaking about projects and responsibilities that required travel, coordination, and decision-making. He spoke calmly, without the need to impress, describing the challenges of balancing work with personal reflection and travel. The young waitress listened carefully, occasionally asking questions that encouraged him to continue without being intrusive. She respected the balance between personal sharing and professional distance, creating a space where he could feel comfortable expressing thoughts and feelings he rarely shared in public settings. The Tycoon's demeanor was relaxed yet focused, his words carrying a sense of reflection that seemed rare to those who interacted with him only in business settings. The waitress then noticed that the Tycoon seemed interested in learning about the city around the hotel. She provided simple, helpful suggestions about local attractions, walking paths, and cultural spots that could be enjoyed without requiring complicated planning. He appreciated her recommendations, noting that her advice was practical, friendly, and considerate. It was clear to him that she was not simply following a script or giving routine suggestions. She had thought about what would make his visit more pleasant and fulfilling. Her attentiveness reflected genuine care and human awareness. As the afternoon progressed, the Tycoon prepared to leave the lounge and attend to other matters in the city. He thanked the young waitress again, this time with more depth in his voice, expressing not only gratitude for her assistance but also for the warmth, attentiveness, and understanding she had provided. He mentioned that her actions had restored a sense of comfort and connection that he rarely experienced while traveling. The waitress responded with quiet humility, smiling softly, acknowledging the appreciation, and expressing hope that his stay would continue to be pleasant. The exchange was brief but meaningful, leaving a lasting impression on both of them. The lounge, once a place of waiting and routine, had been transformed into a space of human connection. The young waitress had bridged a gap, not only in language but in understanding, providing the Tycoon with comfort, respect, and genuine attentiveness. Her actions had created an environment where he felt seen and valued, something that could not be replicated by protocol or procedure alone. The Tycoon departed with a renewed sense of ease and appreciation, carrying with him a memory of kindness and human connection that would stay with him long after leaving the hotel. The young waitress returned to her duties, quietly satisfied with the impact she had made. She had demonstrated that attentiveness, empathy, and genuine care could transform experiences, turning a potentially frustrating situation into one of warmth and understanding. Her small gestures, offering tea, listening carefully, responding in his language, and providing thoughtful guidance, had made a profound difference. The lounge returned to its usual rhythm, but the memory of the interaction lingered as a quiet testament to the power of human connection and simple kindness. The Tycoon's gratitude and respect highlighted the value of empathy, attentiveness, and genuine service, reminding everyone that even small acts can leave a lasting and meaningful impression. In that moment, the young waitress and the Arab Tycoon shared a unique understanding that transcended language, culture, and circumstance, proving that kindness and human awareness were universal in their impact. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow across the hotel lobby as the Arab Tycoon prepared to leave. His time in the lounge with the young waitress had provided a rare moment of calm and understanding in a day filled with travel stress and the usual complexities of a foreign city. He reflected quietly on the experience, appreciating the simplicity and sincerity of the gestures he had received. It was remarkable to him that such small acts, serving tea, speaking in his language, listening attentively, could create such a profound sense of comfort and connection. He realized that this encounter had left a mark, not because of grandeur or extravagance, but because of genuine human awareness and empathy. The young waitress had continued her work, attending to other guests and tidying the lounge, but her mind occasionally returned to the interaction she had just shared. She felt quietly proud, understanding that her attentiveness and empathy had bridged a gap not just in language but in human connection. She knew that for the Tycoon, her actions had transformed what could have been a frustrating and lonely experience into a moment of warmth, respect, and understanding. She had provided more than assistance. She had offered comfort and recognition, allowing him to feel seen in a way that few travelers often did. As he approached the reception desk to finalize his checkout details, the Tycoon paused to acknowledge the staff who had watched the interaction unfold. He spoke briefly to them in Arabic, expressing gratitude for their efforts and patience. While they had not fully understood the earlier exchanges, they recognized the genuine sincerity in his voice and manner. The young waitress joined him, smiling warmly, and handed him a note she had written with a few polite phrases in Arabic, wishing him a pleasant stay and safe travels. The Tycoon accepted it with a nod and a gentle smile, deeply touched by the thoughtfulness behind the gesture. Other guests in the lobby noticed the respectful and considerate interaction. Some watched silently, appreciating the quiet dignity of the moment. The Tycoon did not need to assert status or demand attention. His presence, combined with the attentiveness of the waitress, spoke volumes. It was a scene that emphasized the power of simple human connection over the trappings of wealth or position. The young waitress had shown that small acts of empathy and understanding could transform an ordinary encounter into an extraordinary one, leaving lasting impressions on everyone involved. Before leaving the hotel, the Tycoon handed the young waitress a generous tip, expressing his gratitude in a way that was both respectful and sincere. He explained that her attentiveness and kindness had made his arrival not just smooth, but truly welcoming. She accepted it with humility, smiling, aware that the true reward was not the tip itself but the knowledge that her actions had made a meaningful difference. The moment reinforced the importance of empathy, attentiveness, and small gestures of care, demonstrating that even brief encounters could have lasting impact when approached with sincerity. The Tycoon paused at the hotel entrance, looking back at the lounge and the young waitress one final time. He felt a sense of calm and appreciation, carrying with him not only his luggage but a renewed belief in the power of simple human kindness. The young waitress watched him leave, her heart quietly full, knowing that she had played a role in transforming his experience. The lounge returned to its usual rhythm, but the memory of the interaction lingered, a quiet testament to the impact of understanding and empathy in everyday life. Later, the young waitress continued her duties, but she carried with her a new sense of confidence and pride. She realized that her attentiveness and willingness to step in had created a meaningful experience for someone who was far from home and in need of understanding. She reflected on the importance of listening, observing, and responding with genuine care, recognizing that such actions, however small, could have profound effects. Her experience with the Tycoon became a quiet reminder that human connection is often the most valuable form of service and attention one can offer. The Tycoon, meanwhile, went about his day in the city, but the warmth of the interaction stayed with him. He felt genuinely welcomed and understood, an unusual but deeply appreciated experience in his travels. He reflected on how rare it was to encounter someone who could not only communicate in his language but also intuitively grasp the needs and feelings behind his words. The young waitress's actions had restored a sense of trust and comfort, proving that attentiveness, empathy, and thoughtfulness could create meaningful connections, even in brief encounters. In the days that followed, the story of the interaction quietly spread among the hotel staff. Colleagues and managers praised the young waitress for her initiative, kindness, and professionalism. They recognized that her ability to step beyond routine tasks and offer genuine care had set a standard for hospitality, showing that small acts of attention and empathy could transform guest experiences profoundly. The lounge, once just a waiting area, became associated with this story of connection and respect, inspiring others to approach their work with similar mindfulness. The Arab Tycoon, though traveling to other cities and attending to business, carried the memory of the young waitress's care and attentiveness. He reflected on the simplicity and power of human connection, understanding that what mattered most was not luxury or protocol, but genuine recognition, listening, and respect. The The brief encounter had left an impression that went beyond words, reminding him that kindness and understanding can transcend language, culture, and circumstance. For the young waitress, the experience reinforced the value of empathy and initiative. She continued her work with a renewed sense of purpose, aware that her actions, though small in scale, could have meaningful impact. She had provided more than service. She had created a human connection, one that left the guest feeling understood and respected, and herself feeling quietly proud and fulfilled. The lounge, the tea, the gentle conversation, all had combined to create a memory that both she and the Tycoon would carry forward. As the sun set and the lobby lights glimmered softly, the young waitress reflected on the lessons of the day. She understood that true service is not about routines, checklists, or speed, but about noticing needs, responding with care, and creating moments of genuine human understanding. The Tycoon had arrived weary, misunderstood, and isolated. Yet through empathy and attentiveness, she had transformed his experience into one of comfort, respect, and appreciation. It was a reminder that even small, thoughtful gestures could leave a lasting impact, proving the timeless power of human connection. The story concluded quietly, with the Tycoon departing the hotel carrying a sense of ease and gratitude, and the young waitress continuing her work with a deeper understanding of the importance of empathy and attentiveness. Their brief encounter became a shared memory of warmth, respect, and genuine human connection, demonstrating that even in fleeting interactions, the simple acts of kindness and understanding can create a lasting difference in someone's life. The hotel, the lounge, the tea, and the human gestures combined into a narrative of care, connection, and dignity that lingered long after the moment had passed.